Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the debut record from Necrofier, Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, on October 22nd on Season of Mist. This album has 8 tracks, 34 minutes in length, and they are an American black metal band. Now when I look at the structure of this album, I see a lot of positive elements, but I also see something that I feel like it's missing. Tackling the positive elements, definitely the playability that this album has is undeniable. The tracks are really well constructed, they're really well tied in with one another, so there's this sense of continuity from the first to the last song. There's this journey that you take as the listener that it's never interrupted. There's no pauses, no breaks, just a continuous motion from beginning all the way to the end, adding to the overall experience of the album and allowing this to be one of those records that when you reach the end, because it's only 34 minutes in length, you really want to go back again and listen to it. You just don't feel like you've got enough out of it. It leaves you wanting more. Great way of creating a record, great way of creating a debut album. Having said all of that, when I look at this album, when I look at the soundscape that it has and the atmosphere that it carries and how well it's put together, it doesn't even feel like a debut record. I wanted a little bit more out of the overall structure. I wanted an intro track that kind of guide me into the overall listening experience. I wanted an instrumental interlude that breaks the album into two, that gives me a sense of a break, that allows me to catch my breath, to breathe, to acknowledge everything that has happened on this record up until that point, and then get ready for what's coming out next. Then the album closes off with a perfect track, so from a closing perspective, the album is what it is and it's perfect the way it's put together. It's just really missing an interlude and an intro track in order for the footprint of the record to be slightly bigger, not impacting the playability of the album, not impacting the design or the atmosphere, but impacting the perception that the listener will have out of this record. Not necessarily feeling like there's something missing, but rather a complete piece of art. Once you get into the soundscape, this is a black metal album, but it's not just a black metal album. I really felt like they took elements from the past, going back to the roots of the genre and bringing those influences, not just in the sound, not just in the atmosphere, but in the way in which this album was recorded. But then there's also some more modern elements of black and roll, if you will. A lot of tribulation influence, as I see on this record, a lot of cloak influences. There's a lot of that more modern approach to black metal that pushes the balance a little bit more towards rock and roll. I see that balance coexisting on this record throughout each and every single track. A little bit of the past, a little bit of the present, bringing them together to try to create their own DNA, their own fingerprint, their own soundscape. And I start to see the shapes of that soundscape taking grip throughout this record, almost becoming a little bit better defined as you progress through the album. Another great element of this record and the soundscape that it holds is that when you look at the track listing and you see a name of the song, you better get ready for what that track is going to give you, because what's going to give you is exactly that title represented in the sound and the atmosphere of the song itself. I think that's phenomenal. Phenomenal work across the whole entire record, across all 8 songs, that you can just connect with the tracks, looking at the title, looking at the song, listening to it, you really feel the pure representation of the title of the song and the sound that it's carried through the track, and then the atmosphere that comes out of that sound. One of the highlights of this record without a shadow of a doubt. Once you get deeper into that soundscape, you have to talk about the drums and you have to talk about the guitars, because they're perhaps the 2 pillars of the overall sound that represents this record. The drums felt powerful to me, but not overshadowing anything else. They had a real strong essence of old school black metal in terms of creating grit, creating power, creating aggression, kind of building a little bit of a foundation for the record, but not necessarily jumping all the way into the forefront and just blasting everything out of its way and not allowing the other elements to have their own space within the construction of the tracks. So I like this more old school approach with some modern elements here and there depending on the tracks, sometimes coming a little bit more into the forefront, but the drum sound overall felt very dark. This is a very dark album all around, so I like that they didn't go with a more warm approach as far as the drum sound is concerned, and they stayed consistent with the overall atmosphere of this record. The same could be said for the guitars. The guitars are perhaps a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more diverse in terms of what they're giving the record, not just from sound but also from atmosphere, than the drums. I felt that the drums were more consistent, the guitars are a little bit less. Sometimes more melodic, almost pushing this into a melodic black metal record, sometimes moving more into a just pure black and rock and roll sound, then going a little bit more into the traditional black metal gritty approach. There's a little bit of everything within those parameters. They did a wonderful job being the driver of the experience, really being the motor of this overall album. And then the vocals are sitting behind the steering wheel, conducting the operations. That's how this album is designed. And the vocals added a lot of consistency overall to this record. Sometimes it's hard for you to pinpoint where that red line is that connects all of these 8 tracks because, like I said earlier, the soundscape and the atmosphere really moves and morphs depending on where this album is going. The vocals were kind of the glue that hold it all together, allowing a little bit of consistency to exist across every single track, regardless of the little nuances that exist from song to song. So a really well-constructed album all around. For a debut record, I have to say this is one of the best debut albums I heard in 2021. There's not any deficiencies as far as sound, as far as atmosphere is concerned. It's very complex. There's a lot for you to digest from that perspective, but the way it's put together, the simplicity of approach, how it's given to the listener on a silver platter for you to just listen and enjoy, makes this album feel so incredibly strong from start to finish. And like I said, with 34 minutes, you press play and the album is gone. So incredible playability all around, really strong release for a debut album. It doesn't sound like a debut album when you listen to this record. It really feels like a seasoned band. It doesn't even sound like an American band. It sounds more like an European band because the production values on this record, the soundscape and the atmosphere really push the pendulum towards that traditional black metal sound that comes from Europe, not necessarily something that we see in this continent. As far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with Darker Than the Night. This track is definitely darker than the night. The darkness level of this song is outstanding. It creates atmosphere. The atmosphere comes from the sound that's really pushing that atmosphere forward. An incredible song all around. There's melody in it that makes the song feel very haunting. So there's this nice balance between being haunting and being dark. And that is something that really allows the listener to navigate with some ebbs and flows throughout this track, making the song feel more engaging from that perspective. The vocals are very steady, something that is true throughout the record. You always have a sense that they're guiding your experience and keeping everything together. The clean vocals of the narrator on this track add to that atmosphere. I felt like that was the main goal of having them on this song, was creating a little bit of a thicker atmosphere and changing your perception of where this track is going just by adding that little nuance there. But it's a very dynamic track, very engaging song, and a track that's not one-dimensional. It offers a lot of different elements. They're moving in a lot of different directions while still staying all on the same path. Next, you have Madness Descends. Same thing about this song. When you listen to this track, when you see the progression of how this song starts with a very somber intro, both musically and vocally, then the explosion of power, the explosion of aggression, becoming a little bit more of a pounding track, melodic black metal at times. You see the song progressing, moving, morphing, and then it finishes off so strong, so heavy, so aggressive that you really see that madness descends, or that descending into madness, if you will, as the progression of the song, the musical progression that you see from beginning to end, really well represented. You see all the different stages happening right in front of you. A song that has ebbs and flows, but it tends to move more towards that aggression, towards that peak as you progress through it. It has great atmosphere, comes across from the sound that it carries. Last but not least, Unholy Hunger, a song that once again is represented in the atmosphere that it has when you look at the title that it holds. The two are always interconnected across all 8 songs on this album. This is a more direct track. The other 2 songs left a lot to the imagination of the listener in terms of where you're going on the journey within the tracks themselves. But this one felt to me a little bit more direct, a little bit more punchy, not holding back at all, having a lot of heaviness, having more of a consistent approach, and that heaviness that it has, it overshadows almost everything else. So it's a song that just drives itself, that's pedal to the metal, the aggression, the intensity, everything is moving in one single direction. This is it. This is Necrofier, Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, out October 22nd on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band and the singles. Use the comment section below. Take care, guys.